Hey everyone, welcome to another RealmSmith live painting tutorial. We're going to batch paint some minis tonight, or today I should say. This is Hank here, Hank Harry Pitts. He's going to join us. He's getting a little cantankerous. He doesn't want to sit around. So we're going to jump in here in just a second. Welcome. All right, just going to take a quick second here to let everybody know that we are live. Hope everyone is having an awesome day. It is freezing cold here near Toronto, Canada, in snowy Toronto. I think it's probably the coldest day of the year, so what better day to be in the basement painting up good old minis than on a day like today. All right. Awesome. Just taking a second to let the world know that we're live. All right, so I'm just going to check Facebook here to find out which group of minis actually won our vote. We put out a poll earlier to find out if you guys wanted us to paint the city guard or town guards. Ooh, they look mean. Or a group of townsfolk. Oh, aren't they cute? We're going to find out right now what you guys chose. And at 61%, the winner is the townsfolk. And so these three nice ladies and their children will be painting today. Now, the idea behind batch painting is that you're trying to paint a large group of minis quicker, without all the time that it takes to switch paints and colors in the middle. And so what you're doing basically is choosing a color, and then you're applying that color across all of the minis. Today we are painting Reaper Bones minis, and they're kind of a softer plastic, a bit more pliable, and they do say that you can paint them directly onto the plastic, that they are made specifically, and that the plastic is made specifically specially formulated to take the paint. So we're going to do that right on. But first, what you want to do is, because they sometimes have some of the oil that's left from the process of casting them, and so what you do is you take a little bit of dishwater or dish soap, sorry, with some. You don't want dishwater. You don't want bits of roast beef and potatoes on your minis, unless you're into that sort of thing. And then you're just going to take a little bit of dish soap in some warm water, and then you're just going to nicely brush it. Now you just want to get into all the nooks and crannies, just to kind of clear up any of that release agent that is still on the mini. So we're just going to go across the mini, scrub it real nice, boom, put that aside, get the next one. Keep going around here. I want to welcome everyone to the stream. Again, today we're batch painting minis. Kind of show you how to save some time when painting large groups. Basically, I'm just cleaning the minis here. With these resin Reaper minis, you want to make sure all the release agent that is left after the casting process is gone. All right. We are live today on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time, simultaneously. So make sure that you check us out on one of those two platforms today. Also, spread the word. Anybody who is interested in this sort of thing, any friends that you have, If we get to a certain amount today, I'm going to say if we get to 100 simultaneous viewers, we are going to do a giveaway. We've been giving away dice sets during our live streams and our painting tutorials. So we're going to try and do that today. Let's see if we can get to 100 simultaneous viewers. It's lofty, but I believe in y'all. Those of you that are watching right now, why don't you guys sound off on where you're from? We also have Joel, our producer, on here. He's answering any questions that I might not see while we're painting. Let's see here. Looking pretty good. I'm just getting all the water off it. I want to make sure that the minis aren't wet when we paint them. Now, we typically do a 2-hour challenge. Today, we're not going to do that. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit longer to paint 3 minis. But I'm going to show you guys that within these 3 hours that we should be able to paint these minis to completion. 3 minis in 3 hours. Can we do it? We are about to find out. I got lots of questions on our last painting tutorial regarding what kind of gear I use. So I'll just go through some of the stuff that I'll be using today. Basically, first things first, I use the Citadel layer brush, and this is for all kind of the mid-tone highlights, some of the base coats that are on really fine objects, but this is kind of my middle-of-the-road brush that I use. I use Citadel stuff because it's really accessible. I know that obviously sometimes people prefer to use kind of more higher-end brushes, but I think these are great. They work great for me. And so that's my layer brush. I also have the Artificer layer brush, which is fine detail. I do everything with this. The eyes, all the fine details in the clothing, on the weapons, and all of that sort of thing. I also use a large, kind of their medium dry brush, and also their fine dry brush. This is a little bit of an older one, but they do have a newer one as well. But you can see that the bristles on these are pretty worked out from all of the dry brushing that I've done. And then finally, I have a glaze brush, which is used for all of their shades, which are washes that are used for shading, the shading process, which we will be using later today. All right, so getting started here, let's take a look. Which one should we paint first? Let's see here. Westville, Indiana, welcome. From Westville, Indiana. I don't think I've ever been to Indiana before. Been all over the States, but never Indiana. Still got some soap in the corners here on some of these minis, so we're just going to go through here. Probably should have rinsed them, but that means I have to get up and go elsewhere. We just don't want to do that. So I'll just wipe it out. Call me lazy. All right. All right, so first things first, I think we're going to start with the Bar Maiden. She's got 6 mugs of ale. We're going to prep them a little further by removing some of the mold lines. Now, in order to do that, I switch between 2 different tools. For kind of larger pieces that need to be cut off, I use the good old Citadel X-Acto blade. Now, this one is the older one. They have a newer one as well. And this is a little magical tool. It's a Citadel mold line remover. And we basically just scrape off mold lines with it. Believe it or not, it works really great. So basically all you do is you hold the mini nice and close and you scrape just like that. Now I find that the mold lines on these Reaper minis tend to come off a little bit more difficult just because the plastic that they're made out of is a bit more malleable, and so it's not as coarse, I find. I'm not going to do a lot of this. These are townsfolk. They're not like central figures in the campaign. All of the minis that we paint here and all of the things that we craft in these live tutorials and in our channels on Facebook and on YouTube, we actually feature in our live streams, where me and a bunch of guys sit in my garage in our game cave and play good old D&D. Let's see here. Still quite a bit there, but you know what? I'm okay with that. On this one, taking a look out here, just some stuff along the broom that I'm gonna kind of get off here. And on the side of her dress, her hair, and finally, just along the side here of the children, there's some mold lines here that we're going to just get rid of. Along the baby's head. Careful with the baby's head. They're fragile. All right. Okay, so mold lines removed for the most part. I just cleaned it up a little bit. I don't worry too much about these minis here. Love to hear from you guys in the chat. Let me know where you guys are from. It'd be awesome. The chat isn't refreshing here for me, so I'm trying to get trying to see your comments, but I'm not. They're not coming up here. I don't know why. Well, hopefully it'll all catch up. All right. All right. So first things first, we're gonna start base coating the minis, and in order to do that, we want to start with the deepest recesses on the minis first. That way you don't muck up kind of the higher detail. So we're going to start with her dress. And I think I'm going to go with a brownish color. I think. You know what? No, I'm going to use blue. So we're going to go with a pretty solid blue here. Have all my paints readily available on the wall here. Let's see. I think I'm going to use kind of an off blue. No, I'm going to use a true blue. We're going to start with Cantor Blue. And Cantor Blue is a Citadel base paint. Base paints just have thicker pigment. Or it's a bit of a thicker paint, goes on a little thicker. Again, with these Reaper Bones minis, when you are when you're painting them on or applying them, if they're too watery, they'll come right off, just because the surface of it is fairly slick and glossy, and so we're not getting the paint adhering as well as it should. And Hank is just causing a ruckus back here. Hank, come here, buddy. Hey, come here. Get over here. All right. Let's get her going. We're going to start with the Citadel base brush. Get a little bit of Cantor Blue here on my palette. Now, I always water down these paints just a touch. They flow better. I do it out of every pot. Never paint directly out of the pot unless I'm using the shades, because the shades tend to come through. So let's see if this is, if the consistency of this is decent enough. Welcome, Dan from Raleigh. Welcome, Stephen from the Bronx. And Russ, welcome from Westville, Indiana. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. All right, here we go. That's going on really nice and really smooth. Hank also wants to say hi to everybody. Hi, Hank. What do you see, bud? He's just... Oh, dear. He's just barking at the wall here. Hank, come on. Now, I'm not too worried about the... Hang on one sec. Hank wants to say hi. Sorry, guys. Hank wants to say hi. Sometimes he sees things. Oh, stop. Oh, stop. Stop. Say hi. Oh, stop. That's Hank Harry Pitts. He's barking at the darkness. Is there a specter? Okay. Stop it. Hank, stop. There's no one there. Stop it. Sorry, guys. This is real life. IRL. Stop it. No. No barking. Stop. All right. Back to... Okay, so... Sorry, guys. So as you can see, the paint is adhering fairly well, but you're seeing some of the white through the... I might have to go take him somewhere. I apologize, guys. No barking. Come on. Stop it. Stop. Shh. Steve and I do the same thing. Why is he barking like this? What do you see? Relax. Chill. Chill. Okay. He doesn't do that very often. Oh, he wants right in the camera here. All right. Sorry, guys. All right, so as you can see, I'm laying down the base coat here with a dog in my lap. You know, no kids around right now, but we typically have like 5 kids in the house. So I'm not on daddy duty, which would be even better. Right now, have kids running around screaming. Any parents out there or pet owners? Like I said, I'm not too worried about getting blue anywhere else right now because we will be covering those and base coating those later. There. So messy, but it's all good. It'll all work out in the end. Trust me on that. We're going to just wash our brush off a little bit here. Just so it's not as gummed up. Yeah, no kidding, eh? So it's not prime, Thomas. The Reaper Bones minis tend to be okay just out of the box. They state, and I painted one before, and it's been fine. So you actually don't have to prime these minis. You only need to prime some of the other minis on the market. Stop barking. Come on. Enough. Enough, buddy. Enough. Shh. Shh. Trying to paint here. Okay. You're real tough. You're real tough. Yep. I know. I know. All right. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, if there's any other blue on these other miniatures, we'll paint that in. And there isn't really, I don't think. Stop. I may do the boys' pants here blue. And I wanted to make sure that I made these decisions here. Sorry, guys. Just had to get move Hank to another room. All right, so we are going to apply blue if we need to some of these other minis. I don't want to have them all look the same, so we want to make sure that we kind of mix it up a little bit. And some of the earth tones I want to be able to bring out in this. So we're actually going to stop on the Cantor, wash off our brush. Make sure that you wash your brushes. Don't let the paint dry on them. It's bad news if you do. Hank says hi to all you guys too. All right, let's see here. Steven says Yeah, my kids help too. They help craft, and I run a game for them as well. We're gonna go ahead and start to do some of the earth tones on some of these minis. Base them, especially the little boy here. So I'm gonna use like a dryad bark color for his pants. Dryad bark is another base paint. Again, these base paints go on really nice and solid. Give it a shake. Always shake it up. I'm going to move to my layer brush because I'm going to need some more detail here. I need to get into crevices a little bit better. Don't worry too much about over brushing because you can go ahead, obviously, and that's why we do the deepest recesses first, is because if you overbrush, it's always fixable later. These minis also, some of these paints, you might want to, I sometimes dilute them so that you can get some of the natural, I guess, lighting or shadows that occur from the shape of the mini. So you don't have to worry about like doing a super solid base coat all the time. But that really depends on what colors you're using. So again, deepest recesses of the mini first. There we go. Pants are done. Anything else on here? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to our bartender friend. When I'm loading my brush too, guys, a little technique that I learned over the years is that when you place your brush, you want to kind of roll it out and roll it in your hand as you pull away, so you get a nice fine tip on that brush. All right. She's got like this kind of corset thing, but I'm going to use a lighter brown for that. So there's no dryad bark I want to put on her. I think her hair is going to be, I think she's going to be a redhead. So actually, I'm going to paint this girl's hair, this woman's hair, brown. Hank is not liking the fact that he can't be a part of this tutorial anymore. For anybody who just joined us, we're batch painting today. We're painting a bunch of townspeople all at the same time to try and speed up the process. And basically what we're doing by doing that is cutting down the time that it takes to swap between colors. Because obviously a lot of time you're cleaning brushes and such, and so we're just taking advantage of similar colors across multiple miniatures. This works great when I'm painting my Warhammer armies because they're incredibly similar. Not as much here because there are some differences. Sorry guys, I'm off camera there. There are some differences in the minis and the colors that we're using, but there will be similar colors being used across. I broke my own rule here, and I'm going with one of the higher kind of areas on the model, but I wanted to take advantage and not waste the dryad bark that I already had on my brush and on my palette. So sometimes you'll have to do that when you're batch painting. All right. Okay. So she's got dark hair, and then on this lady, I think I'm going to use dryad bark on the broomstick. Dryad bark tends to be really good for, well, bark. And anything kind of like dull, desaturated wood color. In a minute, we'll try and bring Hank back down here. See if he can join us again. It's on a bit of a timeout right now. I'm sure you guys can hear him in the background. All right. Okay. So that works. And I think that's all for her when it comes to the brown. What I am going to do actually is, because skin tends to be one of the deepest kind of recessed areas, I'm going to go through and I'm going to base coat all of the skin. And to do that, I'm going to use my Artificer Layer Brush, which is my highest detail brush. And I'm going to use Bugman's Glow for all of the adult minis. And Bugman's Glow is another base paint. Goes on really nice and thick and solid. Take a dollop there onto our palette. Once again, folks, we will be doing a giveaway if we hit 100 simultaneous viewers. It's a lofty goal. I believe we can do it. And so in order to kind of enter, if you guys comment and or tag somebody in the comment section. One of your friends from Facebook who you think might be interested in this sort of thing. It might gain something from our tutorials. And once you've done that, then you'll be entered into the giveaway. All right, so basically, off camera again. It's kind of hard sometimes you get in the zone and you forget that there's a camera. So now I've got some blue on there, and you can see it coming through on the face. So it's a little messy. I'm going to have to do a couple coats here just to make sure that that blue's gone. Once this first coat dries. These Citadel paints tend to dry fairly quickly. It's kind of cold in the basement here. It's really cold outside. You can't actually see your hands, so that is all the skin on her. We're going to sit her down and wait. And it's better to do multiple thin coats than it is to do like one really thick coat, because you lose all of that really nice detail in a mini. This stage looks really messy too. Don't get discouraged while you're base coating, because it all does come together later on in the process. At this point, I'm coming around the hair here. And so as much as I said, don't worry about when you're applying base coats, at this point, I don't want to get the flesh color onto the rest of the miniature. Or not the rest of the miniature, sorry. Rather, areas that I've already base coated, like the hair. You don't want to do that. So just be a bit more careful when you get to that stage. And then we're going to do her hands. And we're actually going to use a different color for the children. A bit more of a paler kind of color. Innocent skin tone, as it were. Although I have 5 kids, and they're not innocent, not all the time. All right. There we go. That worked out really nicely. Again, we're getting some of that brown here on the skin, so we may need to come in here again with another coat of this Bugman's Glow. Okay. And this skin tone looks really dark so far, but it will be great when it comes to adding depth. These are Reaper Bones minis, Gareth. For Joe Darby, Shawarby, we have a number of painting tutorials on our Facebook and our YouTube page. Our YouTube link is youtube.com/RealmSmith. Check that out. There's a ton of tutorials there, as well as a bunch of crafting tutorials and prop tutorials and things like that. We're actually right now finishing up an edit on the Rusty Dragon bar from the WizKids Unpainted line. I'm really excited about that. And that should be live this weekend at some point. Okay, so as you can see, I tried to water down the paint a bit more, but see how it's just kind of like resting on the surface and not adhering? That means we need a little bit more paint. So let's add. How's the picture quality out there, folks? We had some bandwidth issues in the last couple of weeks. A little frustrating, but I think maybe we've sorted them out. The Bob Ross. Thanks, Joel. Happy little cheekbones. Just painting some happy little cheekbones. A serene little hairline. There we go. Joel's gonna kill me. All right. You can catch Joel and all my buddies when we do our live stream every other Monday. Now I'm away this week, going to Mexico on Tuesday, so we don't have a live stream this coming week, or sorry, in the next 2 weeks. We will absolutely pick up when we get back, but you can check out all of our beta episodes where we're kind of working out some of the kinks, as well as our official launch episode, which we just posted a couple days ago on YouTube and Facebook, I think. Joel can link to those in the comments. All right, I might have to go get Hank again after I'm done this arm. Let me know you're here, guys. Post your comments in the chat and in the comments section. If I miss a question, guys, while I'm painting here, I'm only looking every once in a while, and Joel doesn't get to it or needs me to answer it. Feel free to, guys, to post it again in a little bit if I missed it. I want to make sure I answer all your questions if you have any. All right, so that's the skin on her. Actually, it went on really nice and smooth. You can see that, how nice the coverage was for that color on that Minnie's face. It's beautiful. All right. We're going to go back and just check our bar maiden. She looks pretty good. Not a lot of blue coming through. I think she's all right. Okay, I'm going to go up and just grab Hank real quick. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be back in 2 seconds. All right, Hank is back. Now we have to have a talk here. Hank, these good people are trying to find out how to paint minis. And I know that you don't do that. Don't try and distract me. And I know that you see stuff that you think is people or ghosts or whatever it is. But let's not do that. Okay? Do you think Hank gets it? Let's find out. All right, so we are done all the base flesh tones. Nope, there he goes again. Hank, stop it. Stop it. Here's your ball. Come on. All right, so we got to decide what color we're going to do her dress. Any thoughts, anybody? Thoughts? Everybody, what y'all saying? I don't know why the comments take so long to come through to me here. I apologize, guys, if I'm missing stuff. Costa Rica in the house. Welcome. Welcome from Costa Rica. What color, folks? I'm going to choose it if I don't hear it. What color? Should we do her dress? Red, maybe. Ooh, Joe. A little red? You know what? I'm going to do red. And Joe has spoken. One of my favorite Citadel paints, Fist on Red, goes on real nice. I'm going to switch to my base brush for this, because it's a bigger area, gets done quicker. Remember, today is all about kind of speed and speeding up your painting game. Get a dollop, water it down just a touch. Again, you don't want to water down these. That might even be too much, I think. You don't want to water down these Reaper paints too much, or sorry, these Reaper minis too much. You don't want to water down the paints too much for these Reaper minis, because it will just sit on the surface and it will not adhere. See what's happening there? You know, as soon as I put it on, it kind of recedes. This is actually probably just as thin as you want it, because I'm still getting some of the, it's still covering, but it's acting a bit like a wash as well. Be sure, guys, to follow us on Facebook so we can let you guys know when we're doing stuff. There's also links to our Instagram there as well. We post lots of photos of our minis and our upcoming projects on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe and follow and hit that little bell button on YouTube so that you guys can get updated on when we release new videos. On social media, we are /RealmSmith TV. And on YouTube, we're /RealmSmith. So please check that out. We've got lots of fun stuff coming up in the next little while. This is actually going on really nicely. It's thin, so it's smooth, and that's what I like. And on this big, smooth dress, that's what you want. You definitely don't want it to go on too thick and mess up the detail. And I mean, as the paint kind of sits on the palette, it tends to, this brush is just way too big and too messy. So I'm going to switch over to my layer brush. Remember, clean off your brushes. Teal's a good idea. Is it Amelia? I think I'll do teal on the last woman there. All right. Now we've been trying to decide what to do next for painting tutorials. Do you guys want to see more, just tutorials in general? Do you guys want to see more painting tutorials live? Or are you guys interested in seeing some crafting tutorials, whether it be terrain or paper craft, or even like tabletop props, things like that? What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments. Let us know, and we will make sure we're getting you the content that you guys want. And what do you guys play? Do you guys play D&D? Do you play Pathfinder? What do you guys play? Do you play GURPS? Now, for all the oldies, now I'm totally dating myself here, but did anybody ever play Top Secret? Man, I loved Top Secret. Totally got some red on her broomstick. Oh well. Loved Top Secret back in the day. That was my jam. Played Top Secret around the same time that I was playing Ravenloft, the original Ravenloft. Maybe not the original, maybe the re-release. Might have been the original. And Al-Qadim. Who remembers Al-Qadim? It was like an Arabian Nights expansion for D&D. Amelia. Terrain Crafts. Got it. Joe playing D&D. Right on. All right. Good call on the red, Joe. We are going to mute it down a little bit when we wash it, but for right now, when we apply a wash, I should say, not wash it. We already washed the minis. But look at that. Just make sure it's all in all the nook and crannies. That blue came through really nice. I'm finding, guys, as I do this, I've only done one Reaper mini before, but I'm finding the blue kind of came out a little, it'll change. It'll almost go away when we add kind of the mid-tone colors. But if you water them down just the right amount, they go on really nice on these minis. All right. We're going to base coat this fine lady, and I heard teal from somebody, so we're going to go with teal for a teal color. Now, in order to go teal, though, we're going to have to start a little darker with a Stegodon scale green. Again, another base coat. This one's really nice. It's halfway between green and blue. And I can't really go full teal, but that is going on all right. It's a little thin, so I might have to do a couple passes. Beautiful. I've decided to stay away from my base brush just because it's kind of starting to splay out, and it's at the end of its life cycle, unfortunately. So Hank has now calmed down. He's rolled up in a little ball at my feet. Victory has been had. All right. Now, when I'm applying this, I'm applying nice, long strokes, smooth strokes, so you're not getting a lot of texture. I mean, this is a really smooth kind of surface with this dress, and so you don't want to muck it up with a bunch of brush kind of messiness. Love this color. All right. Again, be sure to share this with your friends and add them to the chat and their names in the comments if you think they'll enjoy this. And if we hit 100 simultaneous viewers, we will give away a dice set to somebody in the chat or who has posted in the chat thus far. All right, getting in these little crevices is tough sometimes. Oh, that went on really nice. Oh, fingerprints. Now, with these Reaper minis, I base all my other minis, but I've decided that for the Reaper ones, I like the bases on them. They're actually fairly stable, and so and I don't like necessarily on the tabletop, especially townsfolk who tend to be more like set pieces while you're playing. I don't necessarily want them to stand out on a big black base, so I tend to kind of keep them the way that they are here. Now we're just going to bring the teal in. Our shirt here. right above that corset thingy. Now this is where you want to be really careful. In fact, I should just be using my detail brush in here, but I'm feeling lucky today. It is pretty amazing that the paint, I mean, I've been touching the top of the head here fairly consistently and rubbing it as I kind of rotate the mini, and I'm not rubbing any of that paint off. So, I mean, they stay pretty true to their claims that you don't have to prime these bad boys. All right. Then her sleeves is kind of the last bit to do here for the main color areas. Yes, Charlie, definitely check this out. Roll D20. Yeah. All right. Any fellow Canadians in the group? I know somebody from Costa Rica, a bunch of folks from the States. Anybody from the Great White North? Which is where we're from. All right. People say we have an accent. I don't believe it. I do not believe it. All right, so we'll get this. Totally hit her arm here. Get her arm. And as you can see, I totally rotate this mini all the way around. I did buy a Citadel model holder, which is really awesome for painting. But unfortunately with these, they're kind of misshapen. So you know what? It works. I am going to use it. It's in there pretty good. Perfect. Just gives you way better control and stability. You can rest your hand on the edge of this thing. And when you're doing detail work, that's essential so that you're not shaking too much while you're trying to paint. The problem is we're batch painting, so obviously we're going to be switching out models here fairly often, but that's okay. All right. Now, is that baby wearing... Is it a bib? Or is that a little dress? I don't know what that is. We'll decide in a bit. Now, I have to look back here. I don't know. No, that's part of her apron. And also here, yeah, we should have totally painted that part blue. I'm going to go back to Contour Blue real quick and just touch that up. Malaysia. Amelia from Malaysia. That is not Contour Blue. That was Stegadon Green. Let's make sure we get the right color paint here. Almost 2 a.m. Thanks for tuning in. Right, exactly. We sound mostly like Americans, or maybe Americans sound like us. But no, I don't think that's the case. All right, so here we go. Just totally forgot an area in here. I don't know why this is... My brush is splaying out a little bit here. Okay, let's do that. All right. Brush technique is fairly important for those beginner painters out there. Just learning how to use all the facets or edges of your brush to your benefit. There's times where I use the, oh, I totally got blue on her skin there. Sometimes I use the edge, sometimes I use the tip. It all really depends on the area you're trying to get into and the effect that you're trying to achieve. I'm not too worried about that the blue in there. That'll be covered by the kind of the highlight. All right. Cool. All right, so all the colorful base coats are done except for on the children, but I think that we're going to use kind of lighter tones for that. I think I'm going to go ahead and do her apron. So for her apron, we're going to start with a Racar Flesh, another base tone. And Racar Flesh is great because it's kind of a mid-tone beigey, kind of creamy color. And then we'll add a wash to it, and it'll look real awesome. So she doesn't fit. That's too bad. Base coating isn't the most exciting step of the process, that's for sure. Got a little bit of red there. I'll have to go back and touch that up. But it's essential. If your base coat doesn't look good, it's really hard to make the end product look good. I know some people kind of want to rush this process, but without a solid base, the midtones and highlights won't look nice. All right. We'll get into some of the more fun stuff in a bit. We're almost an hour in, but there was a lot of prep stuff. We have about 2 hours left to go. We are going to try and get all 3 of these done in 3 hours. Hopefully to kind of show you guys that batch painting really speeds up things. And these are fairly simple minis. There isn't a lot of detail or parts. If you're, painting adventurers or things like that, obviously you tend to have a lot more detail with armor and weapons, but there's large areas of this that can just be painted one color. I am absolutely making a mess. See, I should have maybe done that area before, but you have to kind of just decide as you go. There's definitely... I'm going to come back in with the red here because I'm making a mess here, but I have to get into that really kind of deep area here. Making a mess. It's kind of hard to, it's a lot more difficult actually painting with the camera in a way, I find. I don't get as clean a paint, but I want you guys to be able to benefit from some of this stuff. I started painting, a long time ago with, I started with Warhammer 40K miniatures. Yeah, James, we'll definitely be uploading to YouTube and to Facebook. It'll be available after for sure. I'm going to go ahead and paint the apron and this kind of frilly area as well, the same color. And maybe we'll use a different wash to kind of differentiate it. But she's got this frilly sort of... sorry, just bumped the camera there. She's got this frilly sort of collar thing going on. But again, in the interest of time and speed, we're going to go the same color. It's amazing what you can do with washes and shades, as Citadel likes to call them, to kind of change the color of a base coat just slightly to give it a bit more interesting. Give it a more interesting palette. Need some more Rackcliffe flesh here on my palette. Advice on touching up older minis where some paint has been scraped off certain parts, or would it be easier just clean it up? No. Amelia, I wouldn't start over. There's no point. You spent so much time on the first mini. So part of that is it's bound to happen from time to time. There's no doubt. You can prevent that by giving it a decent seal or spray with a sealant after. I use the Testors lusterless matte spray, I think it's called, to kind of seal my minis and provide kind of a protective coat. You can also use the Citadel Purity Seal as well for that. So that helps just for them not to chip. Definitely seal them after. But if you want to touch them up, literally just get a similar color. It's nice because typically the areas that get mucked up or chipped or whatever are typically areas that are the highlight colors. And so if you're using highlight colors, it's very easy to go in there and just touch it up with the lightest color that you used in that area. Hopefully that helps or answers your question. But it's bound to happen. It happens all the time. You drop a mini, or just from using it on the table and touching it, wear and tear. All right, it's looking good. Don't know what color I'm going to do her hat just yet. We'll have to decide. Any thoughts on her hat? Not sure. All right. That color is done on that mini. We're going to go ahead and continue with the Rackard Flesh. I think I'm going to do all the aprons in this color. Just like so. Nice and quick base coat with my layer brush. Anybody who's just joined us, we are RealmSmith, and we are doing a live batch painting tutorial to show you how to paint multiple characters or minis at the same time who have similar colors across them, just to speed up your painting. So by the time you're done, it takes you a little longer to do all three, but you have multiple rather than just the one mini done. It's a pretty great feeling. Yeah, this blue did not go on very clean. I'm definitely gonna have to come in here and clean it up. You'll figure out what works for you guys when it comes to like how much to dilute your paints. Yep, I like that, Joe. We'll definitely do kind of a beige color. In fact, I might just do that. I wouldn't use craft acrylic paint, Josh. It just doesn't rest the same on the mini. The pigments in them are much cheaper in quality. You can use, I mean, if that's what you have at your disposal, or that's what you want to get, then that's fine. The Pro mini paints, I guess, the Citadel paints and the Reaper paints, and some of the Vallejo paints are just formulated for this sort of thing. They go on a lot smoother. You'll get a way better result. I use craft paint though on all of my terrain stuff, because it really adheres well to foam, and you're using it in such large areas, or to paint such large areas, that you don't want to be spending, $5 a pot here in Canada on Citadel paints for that, for sure. Okay, we're gonna go with a Rakarth flesh again. This Rakarth is gonna get a lot of use today. And every once in a while, I find that it starts to dry up on the brush, and so I actually wash the brush completely every once in a while. Totally should have done the skin color first here, instead of what I'm doing now on this little boy. Dope. Now I'm going to call it a little boy. It could be a little girl, but in my world, it's a boy. The characters in our campaign that you can see in our live stream are all headed, or have just arrived in Waterdeep at the end of our last session. So I definitely need as many townspeople as I can for the terrain, for the board. Okay, so that's that. I have to be really careful coming in with the skin tone after. I'm probably going to have to touch it up at some point for sure. That's kind of a leather corset thing. I think that's good. I think I'm gonna go with like a purple for the baby's clothing. Make sure also when you clean off your brushes for those beginner painters that you get kind of the inside of this area. If that gunks up, it's game over for your brush. It's game over, man. It's game over. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back in with Cantor Blue onto this mini and just clean up some of that with a detail brush. Again, guys, if we can get to 100 simultaneous viewers during this live stream, we are going to give away a set of dice, which we will send to you. So make sure to comment and tag your friends in the comments and to enter into our giveaway. Check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/RealmSmith, and on Facebook, if you came to us via Facebook today, on facebook.com/RealmSmithTV. Man, I just missed like whole areas here. Got lazy on the first one. All right. It's true. One of our players literally has like, Joel, I don't know how many, like hundreds of dice that he brings in like a tray. I think his wife buys him a new dice set every year or every, I don't know how often. It's hilarious. Brandon loves his dice. I have actually one set that I use. One set of regular dice when I DM, and one large kind of light up die that that I use for death saving throws. When the players are rolling them, they roll a big red, massive red dice that lights up on the 20. All right. So that's better. Clean that up. Wash that brush off. All right. Okay. We're going to go with some brown colors. Actually, I'm going to base coat the children. So for the children, I'm actually going to use a layer paint. I'm going to use Kitty and Flesh Tone, which is what I use for the midtones on the what I'll use on for the midtones on everybody else. But I just figure for the children, they're a bit more pale and new to the world, newer to the world. Let's see here, right, boom. And so I'm just going to go in here with my detail brush and give them some color. And then through washes, I can give them a variety of skin tones. I'm going to have to go in and touch up that boy's shirt. But and so I'll use Kitty and Flesh Tone for kind of a reddish pink skin. Agrax Earth Shade for like a darker, kind of more tan skin. I like to kind of mix it up culturally. The Sword Coast is vast, takes all kinds. I'm probably going to have to also touch the baby up later because I'm going to be painting all kinds of colors in here, but I figure I'll get a base coat in. Nice solid base coat in here first. Now, like I said, at this point, we've got enough base coats on the models that we're being careful around areas that have already been painted, because we definitely don't want to muck up an area that we've already and have to go back. At first, you can be pretty liberal with the paint. Don't have to worry too much. I totally forgot to do the mom's hand on this side. I'll have to go back and do that. Baby's head, paint the baby's head. Maybe have a little hair on top of her head here. How are we doing for time? 1:10, eh? Lots of time. We're laughing. Trying to get all 3 of these minis done in 3 hours. Typically we do a 2-hour challenge with all of our live painting tutorials. Show you guys that it can be done in 2 hours with quite a bit of detail, actually. This time we're batch painting, so we should be able to get all 3 done in 3 hours, less than 3 hours. We'll see. I find base coating to definitely be the most tedious and often longest step of painting a mini. Okay. Back of the leg here, and then other leg. If there's anybody here who follows Dawn Forged Cast with Andrew and company, they're a really great YouTube channel. Just want to give them a shout out. They featured us a few days ago on their YouTube channel, and we really appreciate the love. They're a massive channel, veterans kind of in that space, and just want to thank them for putting us on there. We have one of our painting workshop tutorials on their channel right now. All right, I got to go back in now. Bugman's Glow. It's kind of hard to batch paint when you keep forgetting base coats, but yeah, dude. Joe, he's got to have at least 20 sets, maybe more. Teresa, I definitely thin my paints every time, every amount. I never paint out of the pot, except for with shades and washes. Oftentimes they can come straight out of the pot, but that would be the only paint that I will not thin. And even oftentimes I'll thin those a bit too. I was saying earlier that with the Reaper minis, thinning the paint too much causes it not to adhere as well, especially with the base coats. You got to be careful with those base coats because they act as the primer. So you want to be careful there. Yeah, and Josh, the paint does dry really fast, which is actually kind of nice. There are definitely similarities, Emilio, when it comes to paints across the different brands. I use Citadel just because it's really accessible. You can buy it everywhere. It tends to be good. Sometimes you get a bad pot with Citadel, though, unfortunately. But that's just part of the world that we live in, I guess. Sometimes you're just going to get a bad batch or whatever. But definitely there are differences across them. Vallejo paints are actually quite good. I use them for all my airbrush stuff because they have little droppers that you can kind of just squeeze and drop into. You can squeeze and drop, which is way easier for mixing and for not wasting paints, for sure. All right, so back to this lady, our bar maiden. I am going to do the kind of the leather of her corset vest thing. And so for that, I'm going to start with a Mournfang Brown. This is going to be kind of a warm leather color. I'm going to use my Artificer layer brush for this. Yeah, Teresa, just tap water works for me. I'm not fancy enough to use anything else. Just a little bit of tap water. All right, so in here we're going to dig right in. This is all her leather kind of vest deal, so we're just going to go in there. And these tight areas too, guys, I find, see how close I can get here. I find that just pushing the brush into place is way easier than trying to hit those recesses straight off the bat, if that makes sense. And so I place my brush down and then I kind of push the paint in. You guys see that? Just push into the corners. or slide into the corners a little bit, just so you're not, just it's much more careful that way. And you can see when you water your paints down a bit, they go on nice and smooth, especially now that I have a base coat in that area. It's really going in nice. And this is where, you know, as you add your base coat layers, you'll see that that's when it all starts to kind of clean up a little bit, not look as messy, and prep for the next step of the process. It's a bit too wet. There, I've watered that paint down a little too much, and it's just beating up on the surface rather than adhering. So just a little bit more paint on there, and that did the trick. And you'll see that I'm getting kind of paint on some areas here, like on the bottom of that sleeve. With these minis, like in like bystanders and townsfolk and things like that, I am not too concerned about. I'm not too concerned about it right now, because I can just cover that up using my midtones and highlights later, especially if it's like in the middle of a large area and not the edge. It's a lot easier to do that. Get the straps here for vest. I haven't looked over at YouTube in a little while to see if there's any comments. Bonnie Scotland on YouTube, John the God, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Ibrahim, regarding brush care, let me just talk about that real quick. I wash my brushes often while I'm painting, or rinse them, just moving them around in the pot to get that out, and then I also use the brush cleaner after I'm done. Just wet the brush. You open up this little can of stuff, and you just kind of like roll the brush around in there. It's a kind of soapy paint dissolver that is great for keeping your brushes nice and clean and lasting longer. Thanks for all you guys on YouTube. All right. So I've done that strap. Gonna go over to the other one. See, the paint on my is already dried on my palette and on my brush. These paints dry very fast if you're not careful. Gotta get that little recess there that has white in it still. And when it comes to recesses, after you shade stuff and you apply your shades in your washes, then you don't have to worry too much about it being messy, because that tends to clean things up quite a bit as well. Oh, and there's like a little, I'll have to paint those later, little rings or whatever that connect those straps to her vest. All right. So that's that. No more brown on that mini, except for the base, which I'm going to paint a different color. I'm going to use a bit more Mornfang here. Some more Mornfang brown. I'm going to move on to this mini, and I think I'm going to paint her vest thingy the same color. It's going to be like a warm, light leather in the end. Yeah, no, these base paints, Josh, go really well. Go on really well over. They just cover well, I should say. On the mini themselves, sometimes you're not getting the coverage, but if you have a base coat down or primer, they're gold. They're magical. not being very inventive here, guys, with colors, just because we're trying to get through these. I'm trying to paint these nice and quick so they can get on my tabletop. I used to overthink all that stuff, and, you know, because I'm overthinking, I take forever to actually paint anything, and then my minis just sit in my closet. And what's the point of that, right? What's the point of having a bunch of minis that you're not painting because you're worried about messing them up or whatever? Just dive in. They don't have to be perfect, especially when it comes to kind of your regular everyday townsfolk. It's better to have painted minis on the table than, you know, if you're into that, than it is to have just minis lying around that you're not using because you can't decide what colors to use, etc. Now I'm just gonna try and that got on her hair, but that's okay. Oh, sorry guys, jeez, totally just hit the camera. All right. Oh, missed the strap in the back there. Hank is out, ladies and gents. Tired himself out from all that barking. All right. Okay, so that's that color. I'm also going to use this color for the little boy's shoes, boots, whatever those are. Get some more paint in there. No, they won't activate the base, Josh. These dry so fast that you can, I mean, it's harder to cover darker colors with a lighter color. You'll just need more layers, but it won't unless it's still wet. If you use like a medium, and what I mean by that is like a painting medium, which is kind of a clear paint or liquid, then you can water down the paints and it'll slow, or a retardant, which is like it'll slow down the drying process so that you can wet blend. But at this stage, we don't really need to worry about that. We're just trying to get paint on minis here. I'm also going to use this color on his hair. And then we can use washes to kind of differentiate from the other brown colors. All right, get in between here in his hair. Oh, right on his face. It's okay. Again, we'll be able to clean that up when in the next process, in the next stage of the process. All right, so we've got his hair is base coated. Good to go. All the way down, like so. I also forgot his other hand. Sorry, guys. Man. It's okay. We'll come back in and clean that up when we do all of that. But he is now base coated, except for the ties. And see, on this, at this level, I'm actually using the edge of the brush to catch the ridges of those ties on the front of his shirt. And then the wash that we use will make that all come together. Boom. All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and... what am I going to do next here? They are almost base coated here. Looking good. I'm going to use a Scrag Brown. Oh, wait. Do I need dark brown on here at all? No. I'm going to use Scrag Brown, which is probably my favorite brown color out of the Citadel line. I'm using Citadel paints. They're all Games Workshop Citadel paints. They're really easily accessible for the most part across most of the planet Earth. More accessible than other brands are. Okay, so this color is a lighter brown, and it's not a base paint, it's a layer paint, which is a bit thinner. And so we're going to have to probably do a couple coats of it, but I want to use it for this. And you can see that it's going on fairly well here, actually. I find that Scrag Brown has great coverage. I often use it almost like a wash on minis that are primed fairly light like this one is. Because it literally just kind of like a wash, it'll show the detail in the mini. Like that. Actually, I like that. I like how that looks. Good color choice there. Make sure that you tag friends that you think will benefit from this tutorial in the comments, and if you tag people, we will be doing a giveaway if we managed to hit 100 simultaneous viewers throughout this stream. And if we do, we will absolutely send out a dice set to one lucky person in the chat after the stream. All right. Bottom edge here, you want to get those. Man, see, that Scrag Brown goes on so nice and smooth. It goes into the recesses. I love this color. I'm just making sure I get all of it. Teresa, they're not primed. They're just the Reaper Bones minis, which can take paint directly on them. They're the Reaper Bones line. Oh, I really mucked up that arm there. But again, sometimes getting into these tight spots, that'll happen, and then you just have to come back in and touch them up later. It's bound to happen, folks. It's bound to happen. All right. Make sure I get the straps or the ties. Make sure you get the edges of these things too to add depth. Sometimes we don't want to try and get the edge because it's too difficult, but then it doesn't give you that kind of 3D look. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this same brown for the ties in her hair. They just look like kind of leather straps. And we're going to keep that darker brown, Mornfang brown that we used on her vest, and we're just going to apply a wash to it, and then maybe just edge highlight it later to make it look like a kind of a dark leather, and then these will stay light leather. Sorry guys, I keep going off camera here. Okay. They are almost done their base coats. All I'm gonna do now is the baby's clothing, which I think I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use a purple. I'm gonna use Gene Stealer purple. It's a Citadel color. All right, here we go. Now this one, we want to be really careful. I didn't water that down at all. I need to do that a little bit. I want to be really careful in this one because there are some tight spaces we need to get into. Don't know how I'm going to get in here without getting it everywhere else. Oh, it worked. Wow. Didn't expect that to work like that. This is kind of a pinky purple. It's used for Tyranids in the 40k universe a lot. Of course, in the most difficult area, I didn't get it anywhere, but then in the open, of course, I got it on her mom's arm. Okay. There. Nicely done. And then I'm going to have to do her... I think her shoes are going to match. Get some more paint on there. Way too much out of the pot here. I'm not going to even use all that. Little booties. So cute. And then on this side as well. All right. Okay. Perfect. All right. I think, except for his little arm, which I'm going to get later, I'm going to call them base coated, except for the base, which I always do kind of last anyways, because I'm holding them all the time. It tends to come off, but all right. I've got some greeny color in there, but that's not going to be a huge issue here as well. You know what? Yeah, no, we'll cover that later. But they are base coated. Consider them base coated. And some people may even want to just leave them at that stage. She's going to have red hair. She's going to be a redhead. So I'm going to get some Mephiston red real quick. Water that down just a touch. Get her hair base coated. Now, obviously, it looks very red right now, but you'll see as soon as we put like a wash in here and then do some highlighting, it'll be not so bad. This is just the base coat. She's a real redhead, like primary redhead. All right. The blue is coming through on this, so I'm probably going to have to do a couple coats. Okay. Get under here and this little bit here over her ear. Perfect. Make sure the coverage is good. I mean, this paint dries. Sorry, guys, I'm totally off camera. This paint is dries so quickly that I could go back over here and already do a second coat. It's not totally dry, but dry enough that I can, there. All right, she is good for her hair. And then maybe I'm gonna do the mugs of ale at this stage. For that, I am going to use Averland Sunset, which looks a little bright right now, but it will, you can see that these paint pots tend to dry up and muck up a little bit in there, but you just throw it on a palette, add a little bit of water, and you're good to go. And I'm just going to paint this nice and solid, and then through washes later, we will make it look like ale. Now, you can see here that that the blue definitely shines through on this, or shows through, I should say, not shines. It definitely shows through on this yellow color. So we want to make sure we do a couple coats of this. In fact, I probably should have done a darker base coat, but that's fine, it'll work out. It looks like a bit of a Disney character right now, and that's the problem with the base coating process. Is sometimes, you know, we have to keep our mind on the finished product and what it will look like in the end, and not necessarily have that in mind when you're going through the process, because it's easy to get discouraged and think, oh man, this looks crappy, because it does right now. But it will really get there, as you'll see in the next few steps. We're also going to later kind of dry brush a lighter color on the edges of these mugs so that they look more like mugs and not solid yellow kind of objects. That's good for now. We're going to put that down, let that dry just for a sec, and then we're going to come back in and do another coat. But I am going to use Averland Sunset for the broom, for this nice lady. And I think I'm going to make this lady an older lady, and perhaps some gray hair. She looks wise. Again, I know this looks really primary right now, but it will not in just a little while. Okay, so there we go. That went on actually really, really nice. Okay. I'm going to do her hair now while I'm at it. For that, I'm going to use kind of a bluish gray color. I'm going to use rust gray, just so it gives it a little bit of, and this one is really messed up in there. You can see like that paint can is all dried up, but again, a little bit of water, mix it up a little bit in there, and Voila. You have rust gray again. Hey, Levi. Hopefully you'll join us. Any newcomers? Again, we're just batch painting a bunch of minis here. The idea behind batch painting is you're painting a bunch of miniatures like soldiers or guards or townspeople that have very similar colors across the group. Now, the ones we chose today have some similar colors, but they're all being painted kind of in the same way, if that makes sense. And so it's a little easier. But basically, what you're doing is you're painting similar colors across all the miniatures at the same time, or one at a time. But I mean, you know, you're doing one color, brown, for example, across all the miniatures, and then you move on, and then you do gray across all the miniatures, and then yellow, and whatever, so that you're saving the time that it takes to mix paints or wash your brush and switch over to different paints. Just a bit of a quicker process and quicker way to do things. We're trying to get 3 miniatures done in 3 hours. We're looking at about an hour and 15 minutes left, so we're cutting our close, but we're trying to make it. She's almost done. I'm just going to actually base coat. Changed my mind. I've kind of decided that we're gonna use Rekarth Flesh again on her cap, just to match her apron, like so. Just like that. And she is base coated. She's done, except for the base, which we do later, as I mentioned. Just like that. All right, so she's done. Any Rekarth Flesh on her? No, she's pretty much done, except that we're going to do another quick coat of Averland Sunset on the mugs. And I'm not even going to water that one down because I want it to be nice and thick. So like I said, sometimes I water them down, sometimes I don't. Actually, let me say that again. Most of the time, I thin down my paints. But for this specific situation, I am not going to, because I want it to come on thick enough to cover that blue. And even still, it's not quite covering, but we have mid-tones and highlights coming, which will help that process a lot. And we're not too worried about, you know, quality. Something I always say in these tutorials is, remember that your minis, for the most part, probably 90% of the time, or maybe 80% of the time, or whatever, they will be viewed from about a foot away. They're not being viewed up close. I got some brown on her head. They're not being viewed up close, so don't worry too much about having them super detailed and super great, unless you're, you know, unless you're planning to submit them to some sort of contest or something. But we don't have to worry about that too much. I'm actually going to go in here, and I'm going to use Palette of Witch Flesh for the foam on top. Now this is a light off-white color, and I'm just going to go ahead quick, and now the Rekarth is still a little wet, which is okay, but I'm just going to kind of get that foamy stuff that's on the top, just so that when we wash it, it will also get just like that. No want some of that foam on the top here, kind of coming down the sides a little bit. Boom. All right. And I'm also going to use Racklot Flesh. Actually, now that I'm here, use a little bit of it on this little rag that's coming out of her apron. Like that. Awesome. Now, the most time that we're going to take on things, or the things that we're going to spend the most time on, I should say it that way instead, are definitely the skin. That's kind of the focal point of the mini. So, you know, we're going to work on highlighting and adding layers and blending that quite well the most. But she is done. Base coats. She is done being base coated. Move some of these paints over now. We're not going to need a lot of those. They are done for the most part. Perfect. All right, so let's give you a quick look at what they look like when they're base coated. You know, a lot of pre-painted minis basically just are brought to this level. But, so that's all three. Now we're going to start washing them, or adding washes. Not washing like physically. Actually, before I do that, maybe I'll go in and I'll fix up this little boy's arm, or hand, I should say, real quick, because we want that wash to pick up that skin tone. And then also her head and his face there. Okay. And on this level, I think we're good. Okay. Oh, there's a whole area there of her skin that didn't get covered. I'm gonna use some Bugman's Glow for that, just to fill that in. Hey, Jonathan, no problem, man. There's lots more where this came from on our YouTube channel, /RealmSmith, and on Facebook as well. We have some painting tutorials and some live painting tutorials we've done before. So definitely check them out. We're also working on some new ones as well for the next week. So appreciate it, and welcome to our stream today. If you have anybody else who you think might benefit from this stuff, definitely spread the word. All right, so washes. Washes are basically a thinned down paint that runs into the recesses of a mini, and like I say, it's a bit of a magic step. I always say that because it adds so much depth to the character really, really, really quickly. And so in order to wash the majority of these models, we're going to use an Agrax Earthshade to start. Now, Agrax Earthshade is kind of the brown wash, which I just dropped on the floor, and I will grab. So starting off, we're gonna get Agrax Earthshade. Now, I often apply this right out of the pot. With washes, you can do that just because they're already very thin and watery. Sometimes I add a bit of water depending on how they're flowing, but for the most part. Now, for this lady, we are going to wash the red and the apron all with Agrax Earthshade, as well as her broom. So you don't want to get necessarily on the other areas. It's not the end of the world if you do. So I am going to water this one down just a touch because it looks like it came out a little thick. And then we're just going to do this. And so as you can see, I'm literally just over brushing it over the mini, and it is going to run into the recesses and create shadows for us. Sometimes you want it to be a bit thicker, but you definitely don't want it to pool too much. And then after this step, it takes some time for this to dry, so you want to make sure you allow enough time for that before you move on to your next step, because you don't want to mix wash into your highlighting and mid-toning steps. I actually really enjoy this step. It's fun for me. So I guess it's the first step where things really start to come together. Now, as you can see, I am avoiding her hands and her arms because we are going to use Reikland Flesh Shade, which is a different wash for those. And her face, of course. Looking good. Do her hat. I'm letting it go a little bit onto the gray just at the edge so that it flows into that line between her hat and her hair, just to give it some delineation. But that's what it looks like when the wash goes on wet. Okay. Oh, man. And the wash tends to wet. That does tend to wet the paints under it, so you just want to make sure you're not touching it too much after you've added this wash. There. So we're just going to put her down. Gentle. Move on to the next one. While we have the Agrex Earthshade open, I'm going to wash her apron area and her leather clothing. And sometimes you want to like put a wash over the base coat. Sometimes you want to wait until you have some midtones in there, depending on how intense you want them. Washes tend to bring everything together and blend colors together really, really well, if that makes sense. There, we're just going to wash those leather areas. I'm also going to do his pants and his shoes while I'm at it. Sometimes you can literally just wash and that'll add enough, and then you don't have to highlight depending on what the intensity of the area that you're adding it to. I am going to add a little bit. Actually, I'm going to wash this whole boy with this color, except for his skin. Everything but his skin. You can see right away how, sorry, it's a little blurry here, guys, but you can see right away how it starts to really bring out the detail in the miniature. Make sure it doesn't pull too much in the recesses. We're also going to go around and add a mid-tone and extreme highlight for the boy. So even though he looks a little dirty now, that won't be the case. I'm also going to add it to his hair. Add some depth there and bring out some of the strands in his hair. Like that. Perfect. Done. Okay, so that is it for Agrex Earthshade for that model. And then finally on this model, we are going to use it on the apron here. Make sure and try not to get too much onto her blue. If we do a bit, it's not the end of the earth. We're also going to, sorry, it's not the end of the world. And then we also want to get it onto this vest. We want it to be a nice, rich, deep brown, and that'll help that. Perfect, like that. You can already see how it's really adding. There's a bit too much here. We're just gonna dial that down a little bit. Dial it down, dial it down. All right. So there you go. Oh, you don't want to drop your minis. Although these are quite good when it comes to how sturdy they are, how durable. Okay, so yeah, that's right, Joe. It does. All right, so next step here is now they're quite wet, and so we're letting that first wash dry quite a bit first. But while that wash is drying, we can definitely go in there and add the Reikland Flesh Shade wash. Now, the Reikland Flesh Shade is the skin standard kind of skin tone shade. And I'm using a glaze brush for this, guys, just so you know. It's just holds the glaze or the shades a little bit better. Open up that Reikland Flesh Shade. We're going to see how that flows. Again, you don't want to touch areas that you've already washed with the Agrex Earth Shade, but you want to go in and this really makes the face pop. You can see there. It's going to bring out all those awesome details in her face and in her skin. We're going to do the same here for the mom. And for the baby. And then we're really going to lighten this up afterwards with some midtones and highlights. Once again, guys, spread the word if you have other people that you think may benefit from these tutorials. Definitely tag them in the comments or share it on YouTube. We're simultaneously live on YouTube and Facebook today. That is a baby arm. I painted it like her shirt. That is actually her arm coming around on the top there. So I'll have to remember that when I go back. Okay, so shaded all of those skin tones. Now she is almost dry. You can see that she's still wet kind of in the recesses, but you can see how nice and what these shades really do. They look a little muddy on the reds, but we're going to go in with our midtones and our highlights, and that's going to change quite quickly. There. Very nice. Okay. If you just leave the shades on there, like I said, they look kind of dirty. But we're going to have some depth added there in just a minute. All right, with that done, I'm actually going to do one more shade while they're drying, and that is a Seraphim Sepia. This is my favorite shade. I use it for parchment and things like that. It's kind of an orangey brown shade that I use for a lot of different things. Today, I'm going to use it for beer, for ale. So she's got a bunch of ales. We're just going to work this shade into the recesses. Look at that. And it's just going to nicely tint and shadow those mugs. I'm also going to use it up top here. You can see not as much, but you can see how that really gives you depth. Once again, magic. I swear it's voodoo, but it works. Okay, put that down. I think that's it for Seraphim Sepia across the board here. All right, we are doing very, very well here. Because she's pretty much dry on her body, I'm gonna go in, and we're, working on time here. We only have an hour left, believe it or not. So I'm going to go in and start to highlight her. We're going to go back in with the same red, Mephiston, first. And this is a big enough area. We could probably even dry brush it red, but I'm going to go in and show you how to layer that color in there. I'm gonna use my layer brush. Get some red on the brush there. Wet it up a little bit. Here we go. And basically, we are going along all the open area, all the large open areas, fixing any areas that that we mucked up, just like this. Long strokes down her dress. Just bringing out kind of that mid-tone highlight. And I'm doing this on everywhere except the deepest recesses. Oh, that's flowing really nice. Painting red is one of my favorites. How's everybody doing in the chat? Any newcomers? Where are you from? Let me know where you are. We're near Toronto here in Canada. Icy Canada. It's actually very cold in the basement right now, but I can't turn my heater on because it's too loud for you guys. So, I have a separate heater just for a little extra warmth when I'm down here painting. But so that's the mid-tone. I'm going to then come back in here on her arms, and in the big open areas, I'm adding the base, what we used for the base tone, which is Mephiston red. Following some of the folds here. Perfect. You can see where the in there where the wash is still not dry, so we just got to watch that. We got to watch, not wash. All right. There we go. Boom. Okay, so that's the mid-tone on her. Done. We're jumping a little bit back and forth now across different parts just because it's all drying and we're trying to save time here. I guess at this point we can probably shade her, or add a mid-tone to her apron. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to get Wreck Our Flesh, add it to our palette, add a little bit of water here because we want it to flow. For this step, when you're adding, oh, there's still red in there. My brush at the end there. When we're doing mid-tone highlights, we want to blend a bit better. So we're going to water it down quite a bit more. And it's better to do multiple thinner coats than it is one thick coat for sure. And basically here, again, we're going to come back down and just leaving it in the deepest recesses. And if you just do, oh dear, I just messed up that red. But yeah, you can see I'm just allowing the folds to still kind of show through some areas there, just like that. Then this big area here, I'm going to paint. Catch the edges of her collar, as well as some of the folds here on her chest, like that. I think she has a vest too, but I just wanted her to be a little different than the others. There. Catch the edge, because you definitely don't want to lose that detail in the little ties. Come back in here, and also on this side, those little ties on her shoulder, like that. Nice and easy. See that? Well, the reason I'm doing this is it's taking away a lot of that depth, but the reason I'm doing this is because I want it to be fairly light, right? So you're saying, hey, why did you wash it? And it gave it all that nice depth. and then you covered it all up. Well, you'll see in a sec why I did that. And we're going to wet this a little bit because it's going on a little thick. For this, I'm just going to, I want her hat to be a little darker. So I'm just going to kind of allow it to go into some of the, there. Little ribbon. I'm going to wipe off some of this paint because I want to just catch the edge of this like this. There we go. And then also, I'm going to use this. I'm going to wipe off most of the paint on this. And then I'm just going to use the edge to catch her hair as well in this color. There. Buffalo, New York. Yeah, no kidding. It's freezing. It is freezing here. My hands are freezing right now. There we go. Okay. I'm going to go in and do the same on the other minis on that same kind of Rakarth flesh color, all the light areas. On this one, we're just going to do the same. I think I want her to stay a little bit dirtier, so we won't do as much here. You want to follow some of the folds in the fabric that are evident there. So in that way, you put less on it, and you'll get less coverage and some more depth there. Just need to do the ties on the back here. I totally got the. Nice thing is sometimes if the paint is thin enough, you can just take a dry brush and voila, clean that up. Okay. And then on this mini, which is almost completely dry now, which is good, we're going to come in and add some highlights here, some midtones. I am paying attention to where the folds lie and what areas would catch the light the most. Like that. Perfect. We have 50 minutes to go, guys. Think we can do it? All right. Can't really do skin just yet. I guess I could do skin on her. It's dry. Okay, so before we do skin tones, we're actually going to do the eyes. And the eyes can be a bit of a daunting step. I always say that. You want your artificer layer brush. You want to wet it nicely. And then I'm going to take Rhinox hide. And I'm going to paint dark into her eye sockets. So her eye sockets are actually, this is probably the easiest model to paint the eyes into. So I'll show you on her. But basically what we're going to do here is we're just going to paint a dark little area inside. Boom, just like that. You're going to hit it once there. You're going to turn it around. Boom. Okay, so now her eye sockets are dark, which is maybe more up there. It came a little low. It's okay. We're going to clean all this up. So there we go. Dark eye sockets. If you want her to be a zombie, then we can leave it there. Or touched by dark magic. If you don't, then we continue on. We're going to get some white. I'm going to use ceramite white here. And that is still wet, so we're just going to wait just a second. And actually, I'm going to, because we're batch painting, I'm going to go across every model and do the same. Like that. And like that. And then one more time. This is probably the hardest one because they're hidden a little bit. But you're going to go under her hair like that. And then again like that. Now we're not, like I said, we're not doing any detail onto that skin until we're done these eyes, because we want to be able to come back in and we're going to touch up that eye area afterwards with the flesh tones. There. So they all have dark eye sockets. It's a little creepy. There. Fort Erie, Ontario. That's not far at all, man. I'm just west of Toronto. I'm using the minis for D&D. We use them actually in our live stream, which we also have on YouTube and on Facebook every other Monday. And whatever we paint on our tutorials, we like to feature in those streams. So check out the stream as well, man. Glad to have you, Lucas. Fellow Canuck from just not far from here. All right. So then we're going to get some ceramite white. Now the ceramite white is a little dried, so we want to make sure this flows better. It's very important that this white flows, because we don't want to press it too hard into that socket to try and get the pigment out or get the paint off the brush. So we're basically going to go through here, and I'm going to use one technique that I like to use, which is to add white on either side of that Rhinox. Just like that. That worked out actually quite well. Better than I thought. But this is like an ideal eye or mini for eyes. Hopefully I got that on camera there for you guys. Basically, you're just creating 2 dots on either side of the face. Now that's actually pretty good. That worked out pretty good. I am going to go back in now with, well, let's do that across all of them. Again, we're batch painting, I got to remember, because we are running out of time here. See, I said, oh, we have lots of time. Now we only have 45 minutes. And still got quite a bit to go. See if we can make it. So that one is going to be more difficult. So I'm just going to add white into the whole of the eye. Totally messed up, but again, I can just go in afterwards and clean it up. Baby eyes. Like that. Looks like an alien right now. Or like every superhero with a mask that has white eyes. Okay. And then there and in there. Now, it's very, sometimes it's challenging to make minis not look like they have anime eyes with like these massive eyes, and so we'll touch all that up after to fix that. All right. Okay. Almost done with the white here. There. Done. So whites of the eyes are all done. Then we're going to go back in here. We're going to grab some Abaddon Black. And we're going to go back in and just define those pupils a bit better. Make sure this black flows really well. Again, you don't want to be dabbing a bunch to make sure you get that pigment on the, or that paint on the model. Like that. It's okay if you do a bit of a line because we're going to come through and tidy that up with some skin tone after. So again, those eyes are huge. They look huge, but they won't when we're done. Some people don't even bother with eyes, but I like to put them in. Obviously, it adds character to the models. People are often daunted by them, but there you go, look. These eyes are a little tougher, a little smaller. Talking a bunch because I'm concentrating on trying to get these eyes right. There. Her eyes didn't turn out as well as I had hoped. I might have to go back in there with some white and fix that up. I'll do that right now, real quick. And this is kind of trial and error. Whoa, we got a lot of white in there. A little overboard. It's not an easy thing to do. But again, we're going to go in there and we're going to clean that up. Not worried about it. But it's a little trial and error, kind of like a back and forth sort of thing for me when I do eyes. I don't know, some people maybe can go in there like one go and get it done. Not me. I tend to go a little back and forth. And again, it's okay to do these like massive eyes because then you come back in after. Actually, her eyes look good. Looks like she's kind of looking to this side like, hey, what's going on over there? So, all right. Now, we're going to go in again with Bugman's Glow. Right on, Lucas. That's cool. All right, so I'm gonna go in, and now we're just gonna touch up some of these eye areas that went a little overboard, like that. See, we're just tightening up the anime eyes, like that. This right eye's a little droopy. Just touch that up there. Perfect. This one needs quite a bit of touch up. Touch up her nose there. There. Under the eye a little bit, above the eye a little bit. On that cheek, above the eye, and over to the side. There. Sorry guys, I'm a little off camera, but it's just tough to do sometimes. Certain angles. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to swap to the lighter color, Cadian Flesh Tone. for the kid's eyes. Look at that kid's eyes right now. Whoa, Mom! Dropping minis, not good. And again, we're not looking for perfection. We're just trying to get it to a point where we're happy. Now that mom didn't really get good eyes, but they're kind of covered by her hair. I don't think I'm too worried about it. And that kid kind of has cartoon eyes still. But I'm also don't think I'm too worried about it. Okay, I'm going to go through now and actually I'm going to fix that baby's arm because I didn't base coat it. I thought it was part of the when I first looked at it. Her clothes. Okay, so that's done. And then now I'm going to add some mid-tone highlights on the faces. So basically what you're doing here is uppermost areas, except for the recesses, I'm adding a mid-tone. So now like in here, for example, on his fingers, I just want to touch the edges like that. On the baby, uppermost edges, I want to make sure that we still have some of that darker area in the recesses. We're getting to some of the more interesting stuff, guys, so definitely make sure to share this with friends now, as this is the stuff that is exciting. Base coating is important, but this is where all the magic happens. There, see, her face is done. And the back of her leg, just right here. Nice and quick, guys. Get in, get out on these minis. In and out. Now, I am going to add a mid-tone to the mom. And basically, again, just the recesses you're going to leave open. Lips, chin, the chest and the clavicle. Oh dear. Mess that up. Quickly grab a brush that has no paint on it. It's okay. We're going to highlight that dress anyways. We have half an hour, folks. Think we can do it? Don't know. Okay, so that's, you can see, that's the mid-tone on that skin. Oh, her hand. I missed. I'm going to start moving quick here. And on our other hand here. Kind of been taking my time, lost track of time. And now we're, so a race to the finish. Again, I'm using the edge of my brush. That's a bit actually too wet. Take off some of the paint there and then just use the edge to catch all the fingers and still leave the dark in the recesses. face. For skin, you want to water down the paint a bit because you want it to flow nice and blend, but you don't want to do it too much so that it pools and just kind of runs off the area. Guys, make sure to follow our Facebook page and like it as well. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Our YouTube is youtube.com/RealmSmith, and on Facebook we're RealmSmith TV. So facebook.com/RealmSmith TV. So basically for the face here, again, we're just hitting all of the higher areas with this mid-tone color. This face is really coming out nice. It's an easy face to paint because it's right there. It's nice and big. There. Look at that. That really turned out nicely done. Okay. We did him, now her. Or sorry, we did them, now her. Now our friend with all of the ale. Again, we're just catching all the higher areas, leaving the darker shade in the recesses. Kind of moving quickly here now, so making little mistakes, but again, not even noticeable for the most part. There. Okay. Might as well see it through on the skin, and we're going to go and finish up the extreme highlight on the skin. For that, we're going to use Kislev Flesh, which is the lightest skin color. Well, it's the lightest one that we're going to use today. There's lighter if you want it. And this, we're just hitting, like, we're point highlighting, basically. Tip of the nose, cheekbones, chin, ear, forehead, that sort of thing. Just little bits that would hit the light the most. Knee, knuckles, elbow, yeah, that sort of thing. Maybe the crown of the head here, the baby. On the little boy, again, just cheeks, nose, cheek, chin, knuckles. On her hand, we'll get the top knuckles there, just like that. And then on her face, we'll get the cheeks, chin, upper lip, nose. Like that. And then just a little highlight on her chest. There. And the skin is done. Beautiful. For the older lady, we are going to do a nose. Make sure to ask any questions. Post any comments that you might have while I'm going here. I'd love to answer and help you guys out. Love to also hear thoughts that you have on what I'm doing, and if you have better or different techniques that you like to use, love to hear about it. There we go. She's turning out really nice here. And then for her arm, I'm just going to do a line up her arm like that, and then hit her top of her arm and her knuckles. Knuckles there, knuckles here, uppermost top, line. Like that. I think I'm also gonna... starting to run out of Kislev flesh here. I think I'm just gonna run a line down the side of her face as well, just to catch the rest of that. There. That really turned out. She is almost done, folks. She's almost done. And finally, I'm going to check over to YouTube and see what you guys are seeing over here. Colorado, Moscow. Velis, welcome, buddy. Good to see you. Velis is often on our live stream, checking out our live stream stuff, so it's nice to see him here watching us paint live. Okay, so again, cheeks. Nose, upper lip, bottom lip. Went a bit too crazy on that lip. I lost some of the detail there. That's unfortunate. It's okay, I guess. Just a little spot of detail there. I think she's pretty good to go. There's a bit too much contrast in there. Maybe I might go in there and just blend the edges a bit more. But for now, I'm happy. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's finish this lady off. She's actually turning out really nicely. So we're just going to do some, first of all, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to fix this little part I mucked up on the red. Right here. There, like that. We'll still keep going past 3 if I'm not done yet. So final thing that we need to do on her is a little highlight on the light stuff with Pallid Witch Flesh. We're going to use Pallid Witch Flesh real quick. Get in, get out. And this is going to be extreme highlights. It's coming out a little watery here. It's not... paint is dried up a bit, or it's separated a bit, so I'll make sure we get a decent amount of paint on the brush. Okay, here we go. Edge highlighting. So basically we're just going to run a little line down the edge like that, and then we're just going to do some edges here and just hit, yeah, like that. On the other side, just the very edge and the bottom, and maybe one down there, like that. Then just some of these, like that. That's all we're gonna do there. Then we're gonna come along the edge here of her apron, and then we're gonna come out on these little folds a little bit, like that, and then we're gonna catch the edge of her collar in there, like that. We're also going to do her hair as well. We're going to catch the bottom edge of her hair. Like that. All right. Nice. Alistair? No, so your first mini, if it's pre-primed, if it's one of the WizKids minis, They come straight. They come primed out of the box, so you don't have to prime them, and you don't have to paint. You can paint them with any paint you want. They just pre-prime them, so you can kind of skip that step, which is nice. So yeah, paint away. That's awesome. Those minis are great. We've painted a bunch of them on our stream, as well as tutorials on our YouTube and Facebook page. So check those out. That will give you some thoughts. Which mini was it, Alistair? If you can let me know, I'd love to hear. There. She is almost done, folks. She's almost done. No, all we're going to do is, actually, I'll go across and I will highlight all of this. Again, we're batch painting, so we want to make sure that we're smart about it. Teresa, that red hair, I'm going to use a Evil Sun Scarlet, which is a lighter red color, and then I'm also going to highlight with some red after I've washed it. So we still have to do that, which we will do real quick very soon. Doing the same thing here, running some lines along the edges like that, and then I'm also going to put a thin line across the bottom just to bring that out a little bit. Where's everybody from? If there's anybody new on the chat, let me know where you're from. I'm also going to highlight all of the tops of the frothy mugs with this Pallid Witch Flesh. Just nice frothy mugs of ale for all the thirsty adventurers, like that. And oh yeah, I gotta highlight. I'm using the edge of the brush here. See, just catching the edge real nicely. And then on this, I'm gonna do it for the kid here as well, the little boy. Loxley, Alabama. Is that where that is, Stephen? Welcome. Awesome. That Gnome Wizard mini is really, really great. The people, Justin and all those guys at WizKids are pretty great. They have some really awesome product, which is a joy to paint. So enjoy that, Alistair. I'm just coming around and I'm adding in some of these things real quick. Trying to move quickly here. I want to show you guys some kind of cool techniques too after for weathering and such, so hopefully we'll get there. I may also add another wash to that. We'll see. Okay. Because that is pretty stark. Way too stark. Came out too pronounced. Okay. All right, so let's see. What do we still have to do? For these mugs here, I'm actually going to use a bluish tint. Probably something fairly light, like, is that a green? Something like Finrizzian Gray. And I'm going to dry brush the edge of those mugs to give them a bit of a glass kind of look. So again, with dry brushing, you're just going to get a bunch in your palette, and then you're going to wipe most of it off on a paper towel so that there's hardly anything left on your brush, like that. Thanks, Alistair. Arctic tundra in Michigan, man. I am freezing in my basement here. I usually have a little heater. Usually the house isn't enough. Doesn't produce enough heat, Tim, for the basement. But the heater down here is way too loud, so I can't turn it on for you guys, or because the noise. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just frosting the edge of this glass here just to make it look like there's a little bit of a glass feel to the bottom, or some, just so that it's not a yellow hunk of plastic like that. And then what I will do is I will go to a white color and I will add some streaks while I remember down the side of the glass, the mug there. Imagine the light's coming from this side, so we're just going to go like that, just to give it a little bit of just like that. That works nicely. Really quick, easy way to do that. I probably should have done this before, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dry brush that blue. And I think I'm going to use a dry paint for the sake of time. And dry paints, they come dry right out of the can. You can see this, it's great. They're from Citadel. You still want to wipe off a little bit of it, but let's see how this works. Just going to dry brush this just to give it a bit of, yeah, it looks nice actually. Just a subtle kind of blue tint. Might not be enough, but we'll see. Too much. Forgot to wipe. I find with dry brushing, I always start on the hardest edges because obviously those are the ones that you want to be the brightest. And then you move on to the more subtle ones because a lot more paint comes off first time you do it, right? I should have done this step earlier, but there you go. Looks pretty nice. That worked out okay. She is pretty much done, folks. Just need to do her base, and what I might do actually is go back in and add a blue glaze. This is a Gilliman blue glaze. And what that'll do is that'll just make that that'll make that blue pop. And the glaze is different than a wash. A glaze is meant to tint a color, as you can see, whereas a wash is meant to shade a color, or a shade is meant to kind of add depth. This is meant to bring out the blues and just tint rather than shade, if that makes sense. Or add shadow. This will just bring all these colors together. Like so. And then I gotta do her hair. I forgot about her hair. Sorry, Teresa, I'm getting there. There. Okay. Oh, forgot her chest. Area. this also helps to cover up any issues or mistakes I made. Okay, so we'll put her down. We'll let that glaze dry. Now, glaze doesn't mean that it goes on glossy either, in case you're wondering there. All right, back to her. I think she's pretty much done. We said. I think all we have to do is now. I think I'm just gonna dry brush her dress with some red, just as a little bit of a highlight. So this is Evil Sun Scarlet. Again, dry brushing, put a bunch on your palette, and then wipe most of it off. And then we're just gonna, in a downward and across. So when you're dry brushing, for the most part, you want to go against the grain, not with it, against it. So that's catching edges, right? See how that's added a nice, sorry, I'm off camera again. It's added a nice little transition. It's bringing out some of those details. And then we're going to use a Troll Slayer Orange for a final highlight. I'm going to dry brush this as well because it's nice and quick. It's a nice quick way to add a subtle blended highlight. And on large areas like this, you want that. I'm just going to do this at the bottom here. See that? See how that brings that out real nice? Maybe just on our hip here. Reds are always great for dry brushing. Up the edges here, on that, on her arm. Back and on the other arm. There. The reds on her are all done. She is, oh, she's almost done. Stink. Actually, you know what? That's good. I think the broom looks good too. Except for her base, she is done. And for her base, I would just use dryad bark. I like that the broom looks a little dirty, so we're just going to leave it like that. We're not going to bother highlighting it. All right, so let's finish off these ones. So for this, we're going to use a wash for the baby. Druki Violet, which is the purple wash. How are we doing for time? 15 minutes. We're going to make it? I don't think so, but we'll see. It's going to be close. We're cutting it close, folks. Yeah, Lucas, those dry paints are great. Yeah, Lee, it's magic, but and nobody necessarily knows the formula, I guess. But the washes and the glazes are more like an ink, not a paint, if that makes any sense. And so they're a bit more oily, and so they run into the recesses and settle a lot better than paint does. You can absolutely use paint to do that, but I find that the inks really do the job, or the washes really do their job. Okay, so this shirt is a bit subtler than it was, but it's a bit too stark. These all these highlights that I put on there, I kind of rushed it a bit. I probably should have dry brushed that actually. I would have get a much more kind of subtle transition, but because he's a boy and he plays a lot, I'm going to give him a bit more of a kind of a ruddy brown sort of dirty shirt here. And so I'm going to add a Seraphim Sepia wash to it, and it's going to bring those colors together a bit and kind of make them a bit more subtle. It's going to tint them down a bit and make them subtle. There. Yeah, that's better. Way better. Like that. Okay. Go ahead and I'm going to dry brush her oops. That's a problem when you put a D where a B was, or a B where a D was. I'm going to dry brush her dress, is what I meant to say. And we wanted kind of a teal kind of color. We have a bit of a darker sort of green color. We haven't washed that, but it's okay because it's pretty dark. So I think I'm just going to dry brush. I tried dry brushing it with the Temple Guard blue and see how that goes. Once I've dry brushed it, I may need to come back and add a wash to kind of bring it all together again. So it might be a bit stark, but let's find out. All right. I think this is going to work out just fine. Look at that. Dry brushing is a great technique. I don't like using it for everything. It does make a mess too, so I really should have been doing this before, but I just find that if you use it for everything on a Mini, the Mini tends to look kind of muddy, I guess. But on large areas like this, where you want nice, clear, or nice smooth transitions, it works really well. That worked out nicely, very nicely. What I am going to do, though, is I'm actually going to add a bit of a brown dry brush to the bottom of her dress. And this is some of the weathering I was talking about. But I'm going to grab a Scrag Brown. Maybe a little Mornfang Brown first. See the Mornfang Brown there? And I'm going to load up my brush. And then this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to slightly, look at that, dry brush it on the bottom of her dress. And see how it just weathers? Just gives it a bit of a dusty. She's been running around with her kids, chasing her kids in the market square. And she has a little bit of dirt at the bottom of her dress. Just a cool little weather technique. I might do that with the kids too, but add that a little here. Yeah, good stuff. Love that. Cool. I am going to do that with the old lady as well a little bit. Just, again, you're walking around dusty, dirty, medieval streets. It's going to happen. I'm going to do it here as well. Some of the glaze isn't quite dry yet, so I'll do the back first. But this is a cool little effect. See, look at that. I'm totally wiping some of the glaze away, but that's okay. There we go. Yeah, Teresa, the Citadel line actually gives pretty clear kind of direction and steps to of what to use as highlights for certain things, and orange on reds is a great idea. All right, so what's left here? I think I just need to do her apron a little bit and her hair and his hair, and then they're done. It's looking good. And I need to do her hair. So let's do her hair first for Teresa's sake. I'm actually going to go in here and I am going to add a highlight to the bottom of that mug. Now, In retrospect, I should have maybe made these wood mugs, because we are in fantasy times, and glass probably costed quite a bit, but I'm just going to add a little highlight at the bottom here on these. And that'll just bring out the whole idea that this is, in fact, these are glass. This is a nice establishment. My adventurers, I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial that they're heading to Waterdeep in their next session of our campaign that we live stream on Monday nights, every other Monday. They're heading to Waterdeep, and so I need lots of townspeople. And they're going to be at the Yawning Portal. Don't tell them I said so. But they are going to visit the Yawning Portal, and that is a nice establishment. So, all right, let's do her hair for Teresa. For her hair, I am going to use Reikland Flesh Shade. It's just got a bit more of a red color in it, so it tends to do what we need to do a bit better. If I can find my Reikland Flesh Shade. There it is. We're 3 minutes out, folks. We didn't do too bad. We are close. So, with doggy issues and, all explaining and stuff, you guys can absolutely tell that it's possible to get 3 miniatures done to a pretty decent amount of detail in 3 hours. So I'm using Reikland Flesh Shade here to add some shadow to her hair. I'm actually going to bring some more back in here in her face too, because I lost some of that depth when I was painting. So that's how we're gonna start, and then we're just gonna let that sit to dry for a sec. While that's drying, we're gonna go back to the mom, grab some Scrag Brown, and we're gonna highlight that apron, some of the folds in that apron. So we're just gonna hit the top part of the folds like that. And then I'm just going to run it along here, and it'll pick up kind of the detail on that. There. That looks good enough to me. I don't think I want to add any more than that. I'm just going to highlight the back of the... Oh, I got it on her dress. Good. Saved it. Along the top of her vest, and maybe also the boy. Okay. Bring some of that Scrag Brown back into the boy's hair. And then for her hair, I think I'm just going to use a dry brush of Scrag Brown. Let's try that. See how that goes on. Very nice. Yeah, that's working out well. Okay, so that worked out. And then we're gonna add a highlight to that of let's see, I might use an Averland Sunset. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm gonna use let's see. That's actually a good question. Yeah, I'm going to use an Averland Sunset. Now this is going to be really subtle. We have to be very careful here how much we use, because we do not want it to go yellow or look yellow, too yellow. But basically all I'm going to do is just the crown of her head, just like that. There. And that just brings out that a little bit more. Kind of makes it look a bit, maybe dirty blonde. There we go. Hair's done. Hands are done. I think they're done, guys. They're not perfect. Again, I was trying to show how quickly you can paint and get these done. That was the intention. That in 3 hours you can get 3 miniatures done, which were pretty much at that point. We're there. We got there. We got there. Is there anything else on this mini that I'm missing? Yes. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to add her teeth. You can see her teeth here, so we're just going to get some white on our brush. Make sure it's not too wet. And see, I'm going to hold it sideways, and basically all you're going to do is just touch her teeth. That. Just like that. And then I am going to go back in and try and get her eyes back. Now, that paint is already kind of dried too much, so you don't want to be jamming. There's one eye. That worked out. Better than I thought even. There and there. Done. It's good enough for me. Perfect. Okay, well, this one is almost done. We are going to base coat all of them together. Now, the wash on her is almost dry on her hair. And she is done. Okay, so while that wash is drying, we're going to, what are we going to do? We are going to use our layer brush and we are going to base them. So I'm going to use, we use Dryad Bark. Now bases for me, I always feel like they shouldn't take too much attention. So I always use, yeah, it does, Alistair. Very, very often, it unless you use some medium, you add medium to it, or and medium is just like a clear liquid. They do dry incredibly fast. Okay, so we're just gonna base coat, paint the base on this one. Now I'm just gonna go in, just be very careful. We've done all that careful work on the rest of the mini. We don't want to ruin it by overbrushing this basing color. Yeah, these paints dry really fast, which is also why you have to be careful never to leave your pots open, because if you leave your paint pots open, you'll come back to just a chunk of acrylic. So always take the paint, first thing you do before, apply your paint to your palette, and then close the top of your paint pot, because you do not want to, they're not cheap, and you do not want to keep replacing them because they dry out. And that's it for her. The base coat on her base. I always do this last because I find I end up taking off all the paint anyways. I'll put her down to dry. Get these guys out. while our bartender's wash is drying, or the shade on her hair. Now we want to wet this dryad bark a little bit because it's having a hard time getting into those recesses, and so the wetter it is, the better it'll flow. We also want to make sure it's not too wet, because then it will not apply to the plastic. Polymer, I guess it is. I think that's what it is. If you know different, let me know. All right, almost done. All right. We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. Now, because once again we are batch painting, I'm going to go ahead, and even before we touch the hair on the bartender, I'm going to go ahead and paint her base as well, since we have this color already on our brush and already going. And that is the key. Oh, why don't I just fix up that dryad bark area? And these guys are almost done. I don't know if I will put them on a base, to be honest. Teresa, I actually like the fact that these have a little bit of a base on them, and because they're townsfolk, I don't want them to have too much of a footprint in the scene or on the terrain. And sometimes they have to fit behind a bar or whatever. So I don't think I will. Enough for these. The WizKids ones come with bases, so I do that because they're there, and they often don't have round bases. But these models come with a fairly round, solid base as it is. It just leaves less of a footprint. Okay, let's do that hair. So first, we're going to dry brush with an Evil Sun Scarlet. Yeah, just tap water. Fred, I usually use this with all of my minis that have bases. These don't have bases, and to be honest with you, I'm trying to get through them quickly. And these Reaper minis tend to really keep their paint. Like the paint adheres really well to it, and so I'm not all that concerned about chips or smears while I'm painting. I haven't had any of those issues on them. There we go. So that's kind of the mid-tone highlight. And then the magic of orange on red. We go with the Trosslayer orange. I need a bit more on there because it was a little watery. Okay, here we go. This is for Teresa. Just like that. There we go. We got our redhead. Perfect. All right. So that's that. I am going to just quickly, I just noticed that I missed a little bit of a detail on the bartender or the barmaid. And that is her hair tie, which which we're just going to add scrag brown for, like that, and her headband, or hairband. There. So that's it. Just nice and simple. It's fine for that. Bases have coats. Then all I do for the base at this stage is add a Nuln Oil wash with the Citadel Nuln Oil shade. Grabbing my glaze brush, load my brush up, and then I'm just going to, actually that one's still a little wet. Let's go to this one first. And then you're just going to spread that, and it's going to bring out that texture in the ground. It's also going to cover up any problem areas you have. Like that. And it tends to add kind of delineation between feet and the base. Like that. And one more. It's important on this model because the dress meets the base. So by adding this wash, we're actually adding a little bit of a separation. A visual separation, like that. There we go. We are almost done, folks. We are so close. Once that's dry, then we can. Do a dry brush of those bases, just of the edge of the base, just to give it a bit of depth. Looking around the miniature, looking pretty good. I think she's done. Her and her kids. Very cool. You know what? I'm going to add some little added fun details here. Why not real quick? About 15 minutes over, but that's okay. You guys aren't going anywhere, are you? We're going to get some Calidor Sky, which is a base paint. And I'm going to go in and add a little bit of color to her. So water down that paint just a touch. And I'm going to just paint a line across her apron there, just to give it a bit more detail. Just like that. Same. There we go, just so it's not just a plain. Oh, just dropping her, eh? So it's not just a plain apron. You know what? I'm going to do one on the back too. Because why not? Like that. There. Looking good. Anything I can do on this one for details? I think she looks good. On this one, I am going to do like a light blue one. I'm gonna try Temple Guard blue, see how that goes. And basically for this one, this is going to be a bit more difficult because I have to go around the whole mini, and there's folds. So basically, I need more paint, and I need to add a bit more water to it. So, like that. Make sure I get it into the recesses. Well, I went a little too deep on that one, but that's okay. Or too wide, I should say. There you go. Oh, that looks nice. Just adds a little bit of detail there. And that's it. I think they're good. I'm just gonna dry brush the edge, and we are good. I'm going to use another dry paint, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm just gonna use Terminata Stone. My small dry brush. Again, just right out of the pot. Nice dry paint out of the pot. Wipe a little bit just so it's not super strong. And I'm just going to do this right along the edge of this base. Actually, too much on there. Just to bring out that. That's it. It's actually a little too strong. I'm gonna have to go back and wash that with something. Yeah, it came out too strong. So I forgot I usually use that for the extreme highlighter on the edges. But I don't want to finish the tutorial before I'm completely done. Alright, so I'm just gonna go back in with my favorite wash, which is my Seraphim Sepia right here. And let's see here. And I'll go in and I'll just add that to the base, just to bring down that Terminata Stone a bit, like that. Nice and quick, in and out. No problem, Teresa. I'm glad you made it by. Keep an eye. Make sure that you follow us on Facebook and on YouTube. Subscribe and hit that little bell so that we can notify you when we do more of these, because we will be doing them often. All right, folks. Well, that's it for me today. I'll give you one last kind of turn of each mini so you guys can take a look at what we did here. First, we have the elderly lady. She turned out very nice. Now, afterwards, I'm going to spray these with the lusterless Testors sealer to make sure that, you know, they don't get wrecked on the tabletop from lots of usage. There we go. And finally, we have our bar maiden. And there we go, folks. Thank you so very much for watching. Make sure that you like and you subscribe on YouTube, as well as hit that little bell button on the side of it, just so we can let you know and notify you when we have new content coming out. We do have a Rusty Dragon bar WizKids unpainted furniture set tutorial coming out very, very soon this weekend, as well as part 3 in our painting workshop as well. We're off for a couple weeks on our live stream because I'm going to Mexico next week. I know, which would be great because it's freezing in here right now. And Hank also wants to say goodbye. And so, you know, stay tuned. Make sure that you follow us so we can let you know what's going on. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Stay tuned for another one in the near future. Have a good one, guys, and we'll see you at the table.